Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Targeting the Violence Live. We're streaming live on the web right now, so hopefully you're linking up with us. And we've got a great conversation today. You know, here on Targeting the Violence, we're always talking about ways to curb the violence among our young kids, and what better way than for them to have pride and where they come from. And that's what these two great gentlemen here are going to talk about. We've got Eric Finley, who is a community historian that knows everything there is to know everything about Mobile.
It's true.
Which,
It's
oh, I love it. I love speaking to you. And then we've got Eric Patterson.
Darren.
You know I know it's Darren. Well, I'm going to call you Eric.
Because you're talking, because you think about him.
And Darren is a descendant of the Clotilda. We all been hearing about the Clotilda. So these two gentlemen are so knowledgeable about history. So we're gonna start really, Eric, with you and why it's so important for kids to know where they come from. I know we had this conversation one time before.
Yes, and Kym, let me say, I'm honored that you're keeping this on the dashboard. I mean, this is a subject matter that is much larger than Mobile and any of us. And for you to keep it on the marquee is very honorable. We have to understand how we got to where we are today. And the only way you can do that is to understand the past. And so many of our younger generation, they have not heard the story because it's not in the history books. And it's important that they understand what family is and what culture is. We're missing that in today's environment. When we all came up, community was so valuable.
Everything.
There was never anybody walking around with a sign that said, I will work for food. We had no one in the neighborhood with burglar bars. I didn't know what a burglar bar was. There was one, because nobody locked the doors.
Yeah.
Except we had one lady, Miss Smith. She would come out the door and she would lock the door. And then she would take the key and put it under the doormat. Everybody knew it was there, but no one ever bothered anything. And family is such an important structure, I think, and foundation for some of the key problems that we have today in our communities. And we've lost a lot of that, and we've got to repair it.
We did. I was reading the statistics. They were saying that 20% of children in African American households are growing up in single parent households, to where you're talking about just 40 or so years ago, that number was more like 80%. Yeah. And so we've seen a complete reverse. Darren, bringing you in on the conversation, you have a rich history. We know of Africatown and Clotilda, and we have seen the sense of pride that has been growing with people who are also finding out that now they're descendants.
Absolutely.
And that's making a difference in that community.
It's a huge difference, but I want to talk about what Eric said about the family. That was big. And I've been thinking about this ever since I knew I was going to come here and talk about this. And I was thinking about bringing a sense of pride back to these young people today that they seem to not have. And I say seem because I don't really know if that's what's driving them, that lack of pride. But I was thinking that their history is very easy for them to see. Their history is Tupac and Suge Knight, and Biggie.
I don't even know if this generation knows about that.
Maybe not.
That's my generation.
But at least they have video. They have video that they can relate to. And I'm not going to go into Hebrews 11:1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. But I just did. Because I'm thinking that they need to understand and see. This is a visual generation. See what that history is about. We have pictures of Cudjoe splitting wood, but that's it. We don't have pictures of and video of my great-great-grandfather, Cooper Lee. We don't have a video of Isaiah Kebe off that ship. We don't have any of that they can relate to. This is a visual generation. In order for them to reach out and grasp history, they need to be able to see it instead of read about it. So I thought about this. How do we do that? We have to go where they are. We have to reach them where they are. I've thought about barcodes at their barbershop and barcodes on video games where they can download scan a barcode and things come up on their phone at will. Now we got to figure out what those things are we want to give them. what kind of history we want to give them, because this is a smart generation. If they think that we're trying to do something to teach them, they may shut us down. But they're visual. And I thought about it. We can give them the visuals of how they got here and who paved the way. It may go a long way into making them go, that's pretty cool.
Now, during COVID, when I was able to teach my kids at home, the little that I did, because, the kids were at home, and we did this thing that for the first 20 minutes before everybody started schoolwork, I have this big book on African American history, and they pick somebody that's in a field that they want to go in and learn something about. But that's a matter of home life, but everybody doesn't have that kind of home life.
Yeah.
So how do we reach those kids who don't have a home life like that, whose parents aren't thinking that way?
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to an issue bigger than us. And sometimes I think that on a national level, we really need to create a czar. This is a huge problem, much bigger, as we said earlier, than any of us.
To oversee?
To focus just on crime, just on the roots. You see, we look at the end results, but what causes this? Why is it that this young generation creating all of these problems? Why do we have all these guns? Why are people getting killed? There's more to it than what we see, and we got to get to the roots of it. And again, it goes back to the family. It goes back to how individuals deal with problems, because they see in their own home sometimes, the community, how they deal with problems, and there's no structure. And so if we look at it from a national focus, we've got a lot of beautiful groups in Mobile, a lot of people, churches, community groups that are focusing and talking about these same issues that we're talking about. But if we looked at it from just like we've had czars in the past for certain issues, drugs, education, and we're never going to be on the same page, but at least we could be in the same book, working towards the same goal. And I don't see that right now. Well, I just see us talking about silly stuff that's not relevant to people in the world when we look at our government.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's got to be a focus that is zeroing in on what the problem is. It's not spending $2 billion on prisons.
Yeah.
It's not that in 1970 we had maybe around 200,000 people in jail. Now we got close to 1.8 million people incarcerated. Can't someone see what's happening there? And what do we spend? Maybe $8,000 on a kid, and we're spending $30,000 maybe to house someone in prison. I don't get it.
And that money could go to try to find out the root of the problem for the
Not
child
only
so they
that,
don't commit the
but
crimes.
we could be educating those. I'm not saying that we don't need incarceration. There's some people out there that's bad, that need structure. But I can't see them going in and playing baseball cards, watching TV, and not getting any education. And they come out into the world, and guess what? They can't get jobs. They can't get housing. They have all these restrictions that does what? Lead them right back down that road.
But let's not forget America's role in this whole thing. Other countries, the China, Japan, they put a premium on education. I mean, they make sure that education is at the top of the list for these young people to experience. And you won't find a lot of very uneducated young people in those countries because they put a priority on it. We have people now we're electing to Congress who, quite frankly, are morons and weirdos. They
No, I can't say that.
okay. Well, let me just put it this way. They're fighting over petty things.
I agree with you.
They're fighting over petty things. We have a Congress lady getting kicked out of a concert for vaping and being crazy in the concert. We have people fighting over things that are not important to the well-being of this society. 1781, second president of the United States, John Adams. He said, "Beware of the vulgar rich. They will divide this country into them and everybody else." And now that's coming, it's come true. It's them and everybody else. And their priorities are for their people who they care about, and everybody else fend for yourself. I don't think these young people now can make it without support. Familial support, educational support, they can't do it. And we have to provide that for them in a way. This country has some culpability in a lot of stuff that's happening right now.
So I'd like to tag on to that just briefly. First of all, none of us live in the past, but we've got to understand what happened. And when I look at it, when I look at the Great Society in the 60s and how they encouraged females to have more kids and they could make more money staying at home, but guess what? A male couldn't be in the house. But yet, they could make more money having kids than they could make working 40 hours a week.
So are you saying that was the start of public housing?
No, that was the start of the destruction of the black American family. You follow me?
Yes.
And so we've got to repair that now. We're in the future. We can't just rest our laurels on that. We've got to understand what took place back then and because that was not, it was by design. It was not just perhaps it happened. And
Because then you break down the black family structure, then you can break down the whole society.
Exactly. And we've had periods of this happening all over. And so now that we see these things, this is where we have to have that czar kind of person to come up with that agenda and the roadmap to move away from this.
But then now we come with the problem, how do we fix it? Because now you've got this whole mindset of this whole generation that we don't need a better half. We don't need to be married. We don't need this. I mean,
It's a challenge.
a lot of our kids don't even date anymore.
Some of them don't think they're going to live past 25, 26 years old.
And they style their life to that.
Exactly.
They style their life to that. I'm so fortunate to have been involved in this whole Clotilda saga for the last 4 years, and have lived the life I lived growing up in Africatown Plateau back then, where teachers like Miss Valina McCants really cared. Not saying the teachers now don't care, they do, but there's so many other challenges they face. Teachers now are up against it to deal with kids who don't have the family structure, who are coming to school, that they have to deal with and almost be their mothers and fathers. And then there's the thing about mothers and fathers. You've got young black men who don't think that school is for them because there's only women teachers primarily. I've had young men tell me that school is for girls, so I'm just going to drop out and go do something else. But I thought about how Miss McCants, Miss Eugenia Rankin, Alfred July, just to name a few people, how they cared about us when we were students, how they spent and worked overtime to make sure that we got it. We got it so that we could go forward and not worry about where we came from, but where we were going. They gave us that, and somehow or another, Kym, we've got to get back to that. So yes, we've got to start working on what do we do now? How do we fix it? Hence, my thoughts about giving them the visuals they need to see what came before them so that they can instill their pride, this pride. I remember Mr. Woods at Blunt, Principal Woods. He talked about the pride now that these kids have with their new school, with their curriculum. And these kids have embraced that at Blunt. They've embraced that. You move people out of the projects and give them a sense of pride.
It's a family.
They
Sense of
embrace
family
it.
there.
Yeah, they embrace it. America is culpable, I'm sorry, in a lot of this.
That's pretty interesting. And you made a good point when you said that a lot of guys think that school isn't for them because they don't see men. But how do we get more men? How do we push them to get into education?
It's a good question. I wish I had an answer. I wish I had an answer about what we do to get more men involved in education. I don't have it. I'll think about it and have been thinking about it, but I don't have it.
We've just got to, at this point, almost get our kids excited about school and learning, and that there's other things out there for them besides sports.
Yes.
Because that's the focus a lot of them have now is, and in its exposure. It's exposure, because when they are exposed to the education field, you're right, they're exposed to a lot of women.
Correct.
Well, I am a tour guide on the African American Heritage Trail.
And a good one.
And of course, we go through Africatown, and a lot of people don't know. Mobile County Training School, first African American training school in the state of Alabama,
Built by the Africans.
from the Clotilda.
Mhm.
But what's interesting, and most people from Mobile do not know, that all the principals at the other black schools attended Mobile County Training School. Williamson High School, Mr. Keby, a descendant from Mobile County Training School. Central High School, another large black high school in the city of Mobile. Dr. Ben Baker, Mr. J.T. Gaines, both from Mobile County Training School. Then we go out to Tomanville. Before it was LaFleur, it was Tomanville. Mr. Lemuel Taylor, who is now a minister from Mobile County Training School. Then Fred Marshall, when they changed the name to LaFleur, who is a descendant and from Mobile County Training School. Then there was Coach Rhodes. And then we go out to Blount. There's Mr. Sam Burton, who was a product of Central and County. So we try to share with the students that listen. They walk the same halls that y'all are walking. They never knew they would be on that platform. But guess what? They followed the system. We know you like the Mercedes and the Lexuses and all of this. Not everyone, but a lot of them do get kind of attracted to those material things. Give yourself 10 years, 15 years. You can get that if that's what you want, and your neck won't be hurting. Because at 19, if you acquire those things, $75,000 asset, she got a very, very nice, rich goddaddy or parent, your neck's going to be hurting. You're going to be doing something wrong. So we try to encourage them to follow the process. Mobile right now is in a growth period. This is a destination.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at what's happening at the state docks, Osto, Airbus, the Walmart and Amazon distribution centers around the city,
Mhm.
Bishop State Community College, the programs that they've got down there, we are right in. I encourage them, I said, please take the apprenticeship programs. You might not want to be a welder, but guess what? Your junior, senior in high school, they're clueless that you're observing what they can't do
Yeah.
and what they want to do. You may be that person to matriculate to some university and come back with a solution. No longer are you an employee then. You're an entrepreneur because you're writing your own check. That's the way you got to look at this. Those companies are young. When I was in high school here, I said, I'm leaving, I'm never coming back. I'm
came
so
back.
I'm so blessed that it happened. The gravity just pulled me back, and it was so natural,
Yeah.
and it was right.
And we always talk about the rich history of the Clotilda and Africatown and the descendants there, but there are other people who made their marks here, and I know you had talked to me before. We had some first African-American pharmacists and doctors here and there, and we need to let our kids know that.
Yes.
That this is here, and this history is right here. I think they all need to take that tour.
Yes. Yes. They need to know about Roger Williams.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
And see, when you say Roger Williams, they're just thinking of a housing project.
And you're right. And I was shocked when I went on his tour and we stopped and looked at the placard with Roger Williams. And I'm like, wow, there are pilots and doctors and lawyers and who came out of Roger Williams. Same thing with Africatown, Plateau. Yes, we had great athletes, but we also had some great scholars. And thinking about, I was listening to what Eric was saying about the lineage of teachers and administrators that came from Mobile County Training School, and the operative word there was training. Terry Curtis is the coach and athletic director at UMS. And I asked him once, you know, UMS is primarily mostly white, pretty good percentage. And I asked Terry once, how do you get these young kids to compete with the athletes who just have athletic prowess at schools like Viger and Blount? It's continuity. Continuity. They have these kids from the first grade. From the first grade to the 12th. St. Paul's, first grade to the 12th. We're working on now a cultural exchange program with St. Paul's and UMS and some public schools that we hope will show the young kids at both schools some of the things that the other kids go through, some of the things that they see, so that they can relate. Some of our kids have to go home after practice and go to work to pay the bills. Some of our kids have to go home after practice and guard mama and sisters from predators, and still come to school and get their grades.
And some of them go home hungry, too.
Go home hungry and go to practice and then perform at a high level on Friday night and then get them to do it all over again. Some kids don't have to go through that. And I was, when Terry told me about continuity, I'm like, continuity. When I was growing up, Eric was growing up, you growing up, we had continuity. We knew we could count on certain things. Some of our kids now don't know what they can count on. They may have to operate on the fly every day, and that mindset puts them in a different mode of survival. So we've got to figure out how we give our kids support, continuity, and the ability to understand that who came before them made this all possible. And I'm working on it. I am.
And it's so important, you hit on something too that my husband talks about all the time, is that a lot of these kids suffer from PTSD, and you think of just military, but just in their environment about being around violence all the time. So where they're in a learning environment like school and they're trying to learn, they can't think because they're thinking that everything is like bombs going off, that something's going to happen, it's going to be violent. So we do have to find different ways to relate with them and try to help them when they're away from their environment.
And I think that city government, state government, the government has a responsibility toward our youth to provide them with the tools that they need without them having to worry about where it's going to come from. We need to put a priority on education. I know I keep talking about that, but it's real. It's real. Young kids in other countries know more about us than we know about ourselves. They speak better English than our kids do. They speak different languages. They're exposed to different things in the world. I asked a kid one time I was mentoring, I asked some kids, I was doing a program a few years ago called Drop Back In, where kids would come back and get their degrees if they had dropped out of school. And I asked them to research on the internet, since you guys are always on the internet, some of the most dangerous cities in the world. And I thought they were going to come back with Istanbul, places like that. Guy came back and told me Pritchard, because that was his world. Our kids need to broaden their outlook on the world. They need to see other things than just what's right in front of them. And we have to provide that for them. We have to provide a vehicle for them to be able to see through the window of the world. I love going on Eric's tour because I learned things I quite frankly didn't know. I learned some things I could really care less about knowing, but he knows them. We know kids want to be what they see. Mm-hmm. And so on the trail, it's amazing of the entrepreneurs and the professional Black Americans in Mobile in the 1880s.
Yeah.
We're talking about 20 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm amazed at the number of people that when I said, do you know before the Emancipation Proclamation it was against the law for blacks to be educated or to have property deeded in their name?
But they had that thirst.
Yeah.
They wanted
That's
it.
it.
And that's what
Yeah.
we're lacking, is that thirst,
Yeah.
because, so many of our kids have just been given everything.
So
Yeah.
we come up to Africatown and we talk about Mobile County Training School, which was a Rosenwald school. And most people go, Rosenwald? Well, yeah. Booker T. Washington, when he became president of Tuskegee University, came up with this one classroom building concept. And he would come to these communities and propose it, but the communities had to make a pledge. They just didn't give it to them. But if their pledge did not exceed the cost of the project, Rosenwald would write a check. He was the CEO and president of Sears and Roebuck's catalog business. This started close to 5,000 schools during that time. 5,000 schools. Mobile County Training School is the oldest continuous running school in the Rosenwald School in the country. Now what's amazing, is that right behind the community center and the Africatown Heritage House was the Isaac Whitney Elementary School. The families that lived there, they gave up their property and houses to
For the
Mobile.
school.
Mhm.
Would any of us do that today?
No.
They were
But they knew the
thirsty.
importance of
They
education.
were thirsty to
Right.
be educated. And we got to get that back into the community as to the value. We sure we spoil our kids, but they don't understand the value of that education and the benefits.
Let's put Rosenwald School into perspective. Julius
Now, we got
Rosenwald.
3 minutes,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I'll be real
That
quick.
time runs by fast.
Be real quick. Julius Rosenwald, Sears Roebuck, you
Mhm.
know, had the connection there. He provided books and the ability to little Jewish kids and black kids who didn't have what the little white kids had. They were getting subpar books and subpar tools to learn. He provided that. Same thing with Mobile County Training School. They got these hand-me-down books while the other kids got books up to date and hand-me-down music. And those teachers, Miss Eugenia Rankin, one of the greatest voices you'll ever hear in this community, still here. She made a way with that music that she taught those kids. Miss McCants, bless her, made a way for those kids to learn. And that's what we've got to figure out, how to get these kids back to. Caring about people who cared about them.
And that makes a difference.
Yeah.
Kym, thank you. Hopefully, someone out there is hearing this
Yeah.
and will continue.
I mean,
to
this is the
elevate.
discussion that we need to have constantly on finding ways to better our children, better the education
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
better, I mean, because we've got some great teachers out there right now who are struggling just with how to connect with these kids, how to make them want to learn, give them a thirst for learning, because they're competing with this right here
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
on a constant basis.
Yep.
And, you know, kids' minds all over the place. And again, everybody wants, there's just no dreaming anymore.
That goes
There's
back
no-
to
So we
that
use
goes
that.
back to Darren.
We use
with
that.
QR code.
We use that. Scan this in, and then we can control what they see and what they learn and how they do it. I'm thinking animation. They
and
love
what
video.
they want.
Yeah.
And what they want.
They love
I mean,
video
we
games.
can, we
Gotta find it out.
could, and you're right, we're gonna have to reach them on their level now, because
Yeah.
they learn on a whole different level than we
Yes,
learn.
absolutely.
So it's a matter of changing the mindset for everyone, those who are teaching, as long as bringing those kids. Like I said, we're going overtime, we could talk forever, so we're gonna have to
I don't
cut
wanna
this
go.
off.
I don't wanna go.
But we're gonna have to come back at another time, and we're gonna have to continue this discussion, because we can talk for a long time. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you back here next week.